Pep Guardiola is one of the finest football managers of his generation and even ever. With a trophy-laden career that includes league titles, domestic cups and coveted UEFA Champions Leagues. His managerial philosophy has not only transformed clubs like Barcelona, Bayern Munich and, of course, Manchester City, but has also totally changed the way football is played all over the world. However, as with any great manager, not every decision has been as good as he would have hoped, and it's only now that Pep's have come back to bite him. Some of Pep's strategic calls at City, although initially celebrated or perhaps justified, have now come back to haunt him. Rodri is, without question, one of, and if not the most important player in Pep Guardiola's Manchester City side. The Spanish midfielder is the glue that holds City's midfield together, offering defensive cover, dictating the tempo of the game, and contributing offensively when needed. His performances over the years have been pivotal to City's success, yet Guardiola's management of his minutes over the seasons has come under renewed scrutiny. Rodri's workload has been a consistent concern, particularly in the 23-24 and this current season when City are competing on pretty much every front going. Unlike his contemporaries such as Kevin De Bruyne or Ilkay Gundogan, Rodri rarely had the luxury of being rotated out of the starting 11. Pep's tendency to keep him in the team for almost every single match has led to fatigue, particularly during a season as congested as the last couple of campaigns have been. Rodri's all-encompassing role in the midfield means that he is often required to cover vast amounts of ground. His tireless work rate is crucial to City's pressing system, but this very reliance on his fitness and consistency has made him vulnerable to exhaustion and injuries. In the early stages of the 23-24 season, it became apparent that Rodri was not performing at his usual high level, likely due to overuse. Rodri is also one of the players who's been very vocal and openly against the footballer's modern-day schedule, which is a game almost every 3 days, which he thinks is way over the top. This hints that he could also feel his exhaustion, both mentally and physically, due to this tight fixture schedule, especially in as many competitions as City are in. The failure to properly manage his minutes became all the more glaring when he was sidelined due to a significant injury in the beginning of this season. Without Rodri in the midfield, City have struggled to maintain their usual fluidity, and their form has taken a noticeable dip whenever he's out of the team. While there is little doubt about his ability, the mismanagement of his minutes and the over-reliance on his presence in the midfield has created a gap that's proving very difficult to fill. Part of the issue lies in the lack of a reliable backup option for Rodri. Now, while Calvin Phillips was brought in as a potential replacement, he never fully adapted to Guardiola's system. The Englishman struggled with the tactical demands of the role, which forced Pep to rely on Rodri even more heavily. Had City secured a more competent backup for Rodri, his minutes could have been better managed, and the risk of burnout and injury would have been significantly lower. This could have been Martin Zubimendi, who they may still sign in January to fill the big hole that Rodri's injury has left. Other links point to Bruno Guimaraes, who would be a good fit as well. Who do you think could be a good replacement for the Spaniard? Let us know in the comments below. Now, this is one that may not even be considered a mistake by City fans or Guardiola himself. Would City have been able to win the treble and all the other titles that they have without that heavy use of Rodri? The recent Ballon d'Or winner has been able to showcase his talents and the importance to one of the best teams in the last years by playing most games. He's also scored some incredibly important goals for the club, which he may not have should he have been rested. Would City fans take his injury now for the amount of games that he won for them that eventually led to trophies? Hard to say. When Cole Palmer was sold to Chelsea for a reported fee of £40 million in the summer of 2023, it felt like a straightforward decision. The 21-year-old was a promising talent, having come through City's youth ranks, but was often on the periphery of Guardiola's first team plans. With the arrival of Jack Grealish, the rise of Phil Foden, and the club's tendency to field experienced players in key positions, Palmer struggled to secure consistent minutes. Many believed that the sale was a result of his frustration with limited playing time and that it would provide him with the opportunity for regular first-team action at Chelsea. Well, since then, it's fair to say that this was a terribly regretful sale, considering the player that Palmer is today and what he may even still turn out to be. He's been Chelsea's best player without question since his arrival, demanding penalties and not missing one since he joined, beating Yaya Touré's record of the longest conversion penalty records in Premier League history. Palmer's creativity and clinical nature would have proved a perfect midfield replacement or even partner for Kevin De Bruyne. Imagine those two feeding Haaland with through balls and crosses. Now, this is easy to say in retrospect, when Pep has even admitted that it is his fault, as he played the more experienced players for City. And you can't really blame him, as no one could have predicted that Palmer would become one of the best players in the world at his young age. While Palmer was far from a guaranteed starter in Manchester City's star-studded squad, he was an incredibly versatile player with the ability to play across the forward line, particularly on the right wing. His departure left City short of depth in the attacking positions, especially as the season wore on and injuries began to take their toll. In his absence, Guardiola found himself with a narrow attacking pool, relying heavily on the likes of Foden and Haaland to deliver the goods. And while those players are world class, the lack of a versatile option like Palmer became increasingly evident. His direct dribbling, creativity, and ability to stretch defences were qualities that City sorely missed, particularly when they faced low block defences in crucial domestic and European fixtures. The other factor that haunts City is the loss of potential. Palmer was a player with enormous talent and untapped potential. His loan spells and sporadic first-team appearances suggested that, with more development, he could have become a top-class player, as he is now. In hindsight, Pep's inability to integrate him more effectively into the squad and the subsequent sale of the young Englishman looks like a classic case of City letting a future star slip through their fingers, especially when the alternative is trying to rely on ageing wingers or out-of-form players. Had Palmer stayed, it's arguable that he could have been an important piece in City's attacking rotation. The sale to Chelsea, a direct rival in the Premier League, made the decision all the more painful, especially as Palmer has flourished at Stamford Bridge, showcasing his ability to shine in a more prominent role. When Manchester City sold Julian Alvarez to Atletico Madrid for €95 million, the decision was met with surprise, but ultimately respected as good business, as that money cannot be turned down for a backup striker. The Argentine forward had only been at the club for a short time, but in that time he had demonstrated a remarkable ability to score goals, create chances, and press relentlessly. Despite not always being a starter, Alvarez's impact in key moments made him a fan favourite and a player whose potential seemed limitless. So why did Pep allow him to leave? Guardiola's tactical flexibility is often lauded, but it has sometimes worked against him, particularly with his attackers. Alvarez, while highly effective, was frequently overshadowed by Erling Haaland, who was undroppable due to his exceptional goal-scoring form. In a system that often favours a single striker, it became increasingly difficult for Guardiola to accommodate both Haaland and Alvarez in the same starting 11. However, Alvarez often played the De Bruyne role and was very good at it. His chance creation was excellent, as well as his finishing ability. The Argentine sale was perhaps an attempt to streamline City's forward options and create space for more specialised roles, but in hindsight, it just looks like a huge mistake. Alvarez's versatility, he could play as a central striker, an attacking midfielder, or even on the wing, gave Guardiola more options in attack. In the current climate, City's lack of depth up front has exposed the decision. Haaland, though one of the best strikers in the world, cannot do it all alone. Alvarez's departure left City reliant on backup players who, haven't proved up to the task. Their current form lacks the creativity, consistency, and confidence to feed Haaland those much needed chances. One of the most telling factors in City's decline in recent years has been the ageing profile of their squad. While Pep Guardiola has made some excellent signings during his tenure, there have also been decisions that haven't helped address the balance of youth and experience. The signing of Ilkay Gundogan in particular, while a top-class player, has raised concerns about the longer-term sustainability of the squad. Gundogan has been an integral part of City's midfield for years in his first stint, constantly coming up clutch in big moments and leading the famous killer mentality that led City to many periods late on in a season where they suddenly turned relentless in spring. But as Ilkay enters the latter stages of his career, questions have arisen about bringing him back, as his ability to sustain a high level of performance, particularly in the more physically demanding fixtures, just cannot be the same. While Gundogan's leadership and experience are invaluable, the signing of older players like him has added to the ageing problem in the squad altogether. The likes of Kyle Walker, De Bruyne, Stones, Ederson, and others are approaching the latter stages of their careers, and while they still have plenty to offer, their decline in form surely will not be far off and may have already started. Pep has often spoken about the need for freshness and intensity in his team, but the signing of players who are already on the wrong side of 30 doesn't align with this philosophy. City's inability to bring in younger replacements for these ageing stars has created a significant problem, particularly in a league as physically demanding as the Premier League. As the season wears on, the lack of depth in certain areas, particularly in midfield and defence, has exposed City's ageing spine. Manchester City's attacking style has always been built on fluidity, movement, and variety. However, in recent seasons, Guardiola's reliance on certain players has made the side more predictable than before. One of the core principles of Guardiola's City was the fullback's ability to overlap, provide width, and support attacks. However, since the departure of players like João Cancelo or Zinchenko and the failure to house reliable, natural fullbacks, the team has struggled in this area. So the lack of natural width has forced players like Doku to become more central to the attack, which, while effective in some situations, has ultimately made the team more predictable. Erling Haaland is undoubtedly one of the best strikers in the world, but his arrival has made the club understandably more dependent on a central, physical presence up front. Haaland's goal-scoring prowess is undeniable, but it has shifted City's style to a more direct, less fluid approach than they had when players like Sergio Aguero were leading the line. Haaland's dominance in the box is incredible, but it has come at the expense of City's attacking diversity. The combination of Haaland's focal point in attack and Doku's direct running has reduced the team's ability to surprise and blow their opponents away in the way they once could. What do you think? Have Pep's decisions led to the drastic reduction in form of late? Or is he just unlucky